I'm gonna be blunt and get right to it. I need to stop disappearing for as long as I am, because so far this has been the second straight video that I've actually disappeared for a long time. Originally, I was going to do a botting video, but what ended up happening is the botting video just didn't turn out like I wanted it to be, so that's still on hold. Until then, however, I do want to talk about what makes a good content creator, and I'm not talking about just streamers or video content creators like I was planning before, but more just content creators in general, since for the most part, I think what makes content creators all really the same in a way is really the core idea of what it's supposed to be. And what I mean by that is, for the most part, most content creators just really want a community that they can call their own while doing something they enjoy doing, or at least have a sense of purpose behind it. This is the case for some people, but not all people. I had to clarify that, but I digress. Maybe I'm in the minority here, but I feel like this goes really unsaid for the most part, unless you grow pretty much by yourself, or by yourself being by without any actual guides or videos to it. Since for the most part, if you look at vidIQ or Streamer University or all the other, I guess, popular growth techniques, for the most part, it focuses on either the meta or just gaining over the system or algorithm you're on, which is not really how I do things and not really what this channel has been about ever. So instead, I'm going from a direction of how do you build a community that you can really be proud of while also doing what you enjoy. This video will be divided into 5 major steps, which for the most part, this can be a bit different from your average video on YouTube or Odyssey, really anywhere, at least to my knowledge. Since for the most part, this will be in second person. So in this case, I'll be referring mostly to you, the viewer. Since for the most part, all the things I will mention from this point onward are mostly options inside of a category rather than actually, oh yeah, do this step and it'll work out. So you don't have to follow all the rules, you'll just have to really choose either 1, 2, really however many you want. Since for the most part, it's your choice, and honestly, it's more respectful to actually go from a perspective where you can actually pick and choose what you really want rather than having to do this step or that step. So yeah, you take agency here. No blueprints, just options. You take the driver's seat. Let's get right to it. First step is finding a home. What I mean by finding a home, I mean by finding a home that actually either likes you or just fits you perfectly. Most people would just kind of choose the obvious answer, or at least wherever they know. This could be Dailymotion, this could be YouTube, this could be X. It really doesn't matter, but it's more of a disservice if you just kind of go to the first obvious one and not just look at all the main options. So I'm just gonna break those down briefly, because if I had to explain every single one, we'd be here all day. But they mostly rank into 3 categories: big, medium, and small. So let's just break those down briefly. Starting off from big to small, you have the bigger sites first: YouTube, Twitch, X, really whatever you call really big, which is probably most of the brand name sites you think of. The problem with those, though, when it comes to size, you do get a higher chance of becoming big by most cases, but at the same time, it's a bigger risk. Usually it takes time, investment, luck, some other things, but for the most part, it's just overall a high ceiling, low floor when it comes with it. Usually, people that do separate themselves usually have to have their own angle, which we'll get back to, by the way. But even then, when it comes to growing on a site like that, you need to have some luck and just stepping out of the crowd itself, which is its own challenge. After the big sites, naturally, the medium sites are next. This is where you get your, I guess I can say, outlier type sites, where they're not as big as YouTube and Twitch, but at the same time, they have their own communities in their own right. This is where you get your Kicks, Rumbles, Blue Sky actually counts as well in this category. For the most part, it's actually a bit easier to gain immediate traction, not because it's actually a super easy task. That's not really a guarantee for anywhere, but for the most part, with any of these sites, you can at least find a tribe of people that also have small channels that you can also interact with, so it gets more of a community feel. I think I said it best in a previous video where it's more like a small tribe, where if you find your tribe, you can actually make it pretty worthwhile overall. But as I implied earlier, there's still less of an audience than there are on big sites, so you really have to make the most of it. So it's more of a trade-off. Do you want your own tribe with it, or do you want the audience that you get from bigger sites? But obviously there's still also the smaller sites, which I'll get to in a minute. Talking about the smaller sites, you really have a really interesting set of options. This is where your Odysseys, your Minds, your Noise types. Overall, these are probably the most interesting since they have the most innovation of the set. But for the most part, they have tight-knit supportive communities, but your growth is, well, just slower than the rest. But it makes up for it in just new features and overall having an even more tight-knit community. So really just interact with them, and then you'll actually more or less have somewhat of a community there. Well, as a recap of everything, it's really what fits you best and what you value. Since I can't tell you what's a right and wrong answer, obviously, because every site is a bit different and has different features, quirks, and overall have certain levels of risk and reward to them. So it really what fits you best and what you like. And obviously I have my options, I have my preferences, but I'll let you choose. It is your channel after all. Next step is differentiation, or put simply, what makes you different. Because a lot of people have channels across really every site, but at the same time, what makes you different? Is it something you do particularly? Is it your personality? Is it your skill? Do you just value the community a lot? I'll briefly break these down because for the most part, these are pretty self-explanatory. I'm going to be very blunt when I say this, but this section is a lot shorter than the last one, in part because differentiation by design is more one of those growing pain type deals. And I say that just because naturally over time, you'll learn your own niche or learn your own differentiation style. Hell, this channel wasn't the same about a year ago, let alone now. So I'll just bring, I guess, a guideline of what categories it can be, but it doesn't have to be each and every category or even really one of the set categories. Just like I said before, make your own choices and think about what really separates you from everyone else. Personality is the easiest one to explain because for the most part, personality is really just how you react or how people like you. This is probably easiest for streamers just because obviously if you are around your audience, you actually are very likable for the most part. This is not always the case, but that's mostly the case for a lot of them. Content niche or unique spin is actually mostly for video makers, but this is also interesting because usually what they do is something that usually isn't mimicked by another one. So this is kind of like doing a unique challenge, a unique format. Even this video is because it's in second person is very unique in itself. Skill or value is mostly, I think, noticeable in esports communities because obviously with the high skill level, it's very hard to mimic and it makes it very interesting to watch because you're watching naturally high level play. Similar to how sports and I think FIFA for Europe and then also basketball for the US have their own very high level that you can't just mimic outright. Community value is also pretty interesting just because this is actually more indirect because directly, I'm struggling to actually bring this up. Community value is pretty interesting just because community value by design is more of how you impact the community and how you impact people around you. So if you're a very inspiring person or a very interesting person to be around because you impact others, is a more, I wouldn't say indirect, but it's also a very rewarding since I do have to mention there is other sections, but for the most part, these are the basics I can think of off the top of my head. Obviously, you can get creative when making it, but overall, I think these are the most obvious, I guess, subsections. But feel free to get creative. I really would like to see new ideas or new ways how people separate themselves. Creativity is king here. Step 3 might be the hardest just because bringing people in requires you doing the right things at the right time and where you are. So this is where step 1 when it comes to building a home also matters because there is a few good and bad practices depending on where you are. To give a few examples, personal connections is an interesting one, since for most people can see that as nepotism. It isn't, by the way. But depending on the site, especially if it's a smaller one, people will be open to actually collabing with you, or at least if they're a comparable size. So this works better if you're on a smaller site or medium site rather than on a big one. But this is just more of a similar interest, and if you don't actually abuse it, then you'll be fine. Maybe DM a person and have a conversation with them and just connect with them first. That's all I really recommend with personal connections. When it comes to multi-platform, this is something that you should probably do regardless, just because for the most part, if you don't actually insist them on yourself, you should be fine. When it comes to community engagement though, that should be pretty much always recommended, because this is one of the most basic things of actually keeping your campfire open, because whenever people are coming around, it really wouldn't be right to just jump in and only do the bare minimum, unless that's your thing. But at least be consistent with it. That's all I'm asking here. Last part of this, at least to be short, is mostly consistency. For the most part, consistency is probably the hardest thing that a lot of people do, since a lot of people just straight disappear for months on end, me included. But being consistent overall is actually a very useful skill, unless it's just a very high intensity video. This is not saying, oh yeah, you have to be super consistent or else, but it's very recommended for you to at least have somewhat a semblance of a set schedule. Because I at least try to release a video every month just to make it even on my end. And I expect at least somewhat of a schedule on your part, maybe 2 weeks, maybe a week, maybe even days. I don't recommend daily, but that's just how you go. Overall, how you attract your first maybe 10 people or 20 people, or at least just an audience that likes you for you. How do you bring them in from someone not knowing you to knowing you? This part is the most interesting just because it's probably by far not really as talked about for the most part, but it's exponentially important when it comes to not only videos but just media in general. Because for the most part, when a lot of people start getting a lot of numbers, yes, the content still grows and it improves, but the person behind it also needs to, I guess, keep the same values overall. So for the most part, I do recommend you do stay true to what you were originally going for when you're making the channel. And I don't really mind what that channel really could be, but it's just more stay true to why you originally started the channel. You don't just get lost in the sauce, put simply. I think having community-led initiatives as well could work, especially since then you actually get the voice of your community and what they like and what they dislike, rather than just going along with posting content and just leaving it at that. This is a very simple way to actually realize what your community really is and turning into, and this is also a good way to actually build community trust. But this is, again, all recommendation. Having transparency moments, not full transparency, but being transparent enough to be clear and concise without having to actually be, I guess, critically behind the scenes. I can probably name several controversies that actually don't do this, but it's easier just to say, hey, try to at least be somewhat transparent with your audience about, I guess, whenever needed. It's probably the best step back to say it. While doing that, I also do recommend making your audience feel included when your victories. So don't make it your victory, make it ours. This is usually shown a bit in the, milestone celebrations, but this is not just for milestone celebrations, but also just overall when it actually something good happens. Not just for you, but for the community as a whole. So just expand the mindset to where everyone benefits, not just you. I know this section might seem more janky than the other two, but this is just because, put simply, this is the hardest to explain just because for the most part, or this is more to prevent following things like bad practices or really just becoming something that you don't really recognize after about a year or two. since a lot of people can get traction, but at the same time, keeping what kept your channel great is also its own thing. Or sorry, community great is what kept its own thing. Since for the most part, it's not the channel's growth, it's really the community's growth as a whole. Naturally, flipping the coin, the journey doesn't end here, it evolves. So, naturally over time, people aren't going to watch the same video over and over and over again because just people evolve, people get better when it comes to their own craft. So, trying new formats, as listening to community, take breaks when needed. All this really matters when it comes to it because overall you get better as a result. Well, even when it comes to my reflection video, that was after a whole year of making content at that point, or at least more or less a year. Like I was saying earlier, creativity is really king here. But to briefly go over every single section, I can do that pretty easily. Trying new formats is the natural next step, since obviously going over to a new frontier shouldn't be your first immediate step, but it's obviously a next step, since for the most part, trying new things is also to make a new niche for you, or even make you more original than the rest. So, for a podcast person, trying interviews, IRL streams, really everything in your own avenue, this could be a good move for you. I'm not really sure what you do, but let's just figure that out as we go along. Listening to your community is also a very important step, since it's not based on viewership, but it's rather based on, oh yeah, did this work when it comes to people who did watch it? And did they enjoy it and would they want to see it again? I do have to say this lightly, but do take breaks when needed. Don't really overwork yourself, especially since for the most part, a lot of us are just doing this for the fun of it. So taking more effort than you actually are putting in and is almost a counterintuitive type measure. So take breaks when needed, but at the same time, and feel free to actually come back when you're ready best, or fill a schedule that fits you best. So you can do the consistency and take breaks. So maybe a week, maybe a month. It really depends on how you operate. Documenting your journey is also very important. I'm not saying, oh yeah, make a whole draw my life video or anything like that, or even explain it to your audience bluntly in a stream. But for the most part, when I say documenting your journey, even writing notes about what you think you did right and what you think you did wrong, really do help, since you guys probably learn from those and then naturally follow up on the next one. So this is a very useful step of growing, evolving, and reflection naturally. Overall, what will you try next time? What went right? What went wrong? To be fair, growing and evolving is a natural step, and creativity again is king. So feel free to actually make mistakes. Just remember to get back up after. To be blunt, I can't really guarantee that this will all just work out, since that's just not how it works. For the most part of this luck, part of it just finding your own stride and finding what works best, what doesn't. But from what I've seen and what I've experienced as a creator myself for the past year, this is the stuff that really sticks with people and really keeps them coming back. This is the reason why people actually end up coming back and actually like people for people. So I can't really guarantee, that people have 500 million or something at start like that. But I can say that people will come back for you if you do follow your own path and at least, I guess, generally follow the ideas. So whether you're starting out or at least are pretty experienced, this is just more of a, not really a guide in a sense, more of just a general outlook of what you could be doing, what you could be doing, or what the future could hold. Feel free to try at least some of the ideas, or at least really all the ideas if you really want to. But with that, I will leave you off, and sorry for making this video so long, but I still gotta go. I'll see y'all.